This video will be a very brief introduction to the different parts of Shepherd. Later videos will go more in depth on different parts. You'll begin with the login screen. Everyone will have a unique PIN code to log themselves in. The first thing that will come up is what's called the dashboard. This is going to show patients that are currently checked into the building. And on each patient's little card here, you can see all the relevant information you need: patient name, any warnings, the owner's name, what time they checked in, where they're at in the building, who is currently assigned to them, and the reason for their visit that day. Also up the top, we have different statuses. So we have the patients that are currently in the building, patients that have left but the notes still need to be finished, any patients that have lab work pending, the lab results will show up on here. Any refill requests will come here. Next we have the client and patient area. So here the clients won't show right away, but when you start typing, they will very quickly show up. With any name that you type, you'll get patient names as well as client names to look through there. Next we will move on to the schedule. So on the schedule, you'll see that different from ClientTracs, there isn't a preset template underneath, but currently what we have is a guide that will be in the middle of the page to show what types of appointments we can schedule that time, and based on the time that the appointment needs to be scheduled, we can go ahead and put that on the calendar. No matter where you scroll, this little guide will be visible. And as the appointments start filling in, it'll be much easier to see. Then we have the Invoices tab. So if we ever need to go straight to someone's invoice, we can see, again, there are several pages, the active ones, ones where they have already checked out. This tab will show the ones that are specifically for prescription refills, and any with overdue balances or unpaid balances. For tasks, this will be a new feature for us. There are various things that can assign a task. So you can just create a custom task. Let's say you wanted a reminder for yourself, or if you had talked to someone about completing some sort of a task, you can assign that. Also, various diagnostic or diagnoses that are given to a patient, or certain items that are invoiced to a patient, they can create a task as well, depending on what needs to be done. And so one of the important things about Shepherd is pretty much every page has a search bar, but also whenever there's a bunch of items, we can filter them very easily. So you can see multiple columns here can be filtered. And with everyone having their own login, another important thing is the assigned filter. So up at the top, we can very quickly just click Assign to Me, and then only the things that are assigned to you will show up. But you can also change that filter to include other people as well. And you can even put multiple people in one search. While we're talking about searching, there's also always going to be this little search button up at the top. And so here you can search for clients, you can search for inventory items and services. So you can search for multiple different things very quickly up at the top there. Then we have our message center. So we can have two-way text messaging with Shepherd, so we can have full conversations with the owner without having to pick up the phone if that's preferential. And there will be templates saved over here. So let's say for telling someone their medications are ready or surgery is complete, we'll have some very convenient templates that we can just tap on and put there. And then we can also assign users. so that certain people will be notified when messages come in. Another new thing for us will be the whiteboard. So this is essentially a digital version of what we currently have as the treatment sheet. And so as it's digital, it'll show us the time that a particular treatment is scheduled to be done. It'll show us the status, whether we actually completed it or not, which we can check off. And when there will be multiple patients here, they can be sorted in various ways as well. And so that'll be very easy for everyone to look at and see what's being done, who's in the hospital. And once again, they can be assigned to people, so you can even click Assign to Me and filter out all of the patients that you don't need to be looking at the moment. Forms. So this is where we currently have our custom documents that we can print. So all of these forms, they will be digital, so we can send them to a client to have them fill out digitally, or even in the building we can hand them some sort of a tablet or computer and have them fill them out digitally with a signature, as well as clicking boxes and making selections. And so once the form is completed, it'll come back here as a response, and we'll be able to open that up and see that. These responses will also go directly to the client's own record, so they won't just be here, they'll also be right in their record where we need them. And so let's go into one of these patients that we have here. If we go back to the dashboard, we're going to go into a patient that should already be active. So this is what we'll call the SOAP screen. So every patient that's checked in will have a SOAP. And this is what helps us to follow them through their appointment. It stands for Subjective, Objective, Assessment, Plan, and then the remainder here is the discharge instructions, the prescriptions, and the invoice. At the beginning, we have the SOAP summary page. So we can see here the basic information that we would start an appointment with. So this would be filled out as the patient comes in, is checked in by the receptionist, and gets started with the room technicians. Also on the summary page would be where we can do an estimate. Any items that are put onto the estimate can go directly into the invoice. There will also be the option of saying whether the client approved or declined a particular item, and that will be saved in the record as well for future reference, that they declined services that were offered. If they accept them, they can go straight onto the plan and onto the invoice. In Subjective, this is where we would take the history and any medications, foods, things like that. On Objective, these would be things that we can measure. So things like the TPR, the weight of the animal, all of that can be tracked here. And then the doctor's physical exam. This will be a digital form that the doctors will fill out. So part of our transition here will be starting to use electronic medical records as opposed to writing our exams on the physical cards. And then there's also a tracking here so that we can visualize how these parameters change over time. We can also view past exams from the patient. Assessment. So here we're going to be creating our problem list, and so now we'll be able to actually track the problems that the patient has had over time, the diagnoses that they've had over time. And then this is also where we'll have our laboratory results, imaging results, any documents or forms that we would like attached to the current visit. And we have the plan page. So on the plan page, we have where we're going to order treatments or procedures. When they're ordered, they can be scheduled as either happening right away for an outpatient, scheduled, so if this is a hospitalized patient, we can say what time of day we want it done or how often, or just as needed if it's not something that needs to be done right away. As the items are marked complete, they'll come down to the treatment history, and at this point they'll also go straight on to the invoice. With discharge instructions, a nice feature here is that we can have preset discharge instructions. So if we diagnose, let's say, hyperthyroidism, we can have a client handout that talks about hyperthyroidism. Will automatically come here. If we do a specific surgery, we'll have an automatic discharge come straight here. But we can also manually add any of those. And straight from this page, we can email them to the client, or we can print them. Prescriptions, so we will enter any prescriptions onto this page, and when we enter them here, they'll also be printed out. And finally, we have the invoice page. So here we just have a summary of the invoice, but when we click View Invoice, see a little more detail. We can also add some over-the-counter items at this point. Then once we're ready to take payment, we come over here. Now up at the top we can see where there's the outstanding balance for this client. If there was a credit, this would be in green over here. Also, it's nice to note that on all of these pages there are many different places where you can have notes. So for instance, on this case we can have notes that are printed out onto the invoice for the client, but also internal notes such as maybe if they're making a partial payment, a note as to why that's happening, or anything else related to the payment. But every page has a note section, so if you're administering a medication or scheduling, anything like that, you can always have a custom note that will stay right there with that relevant information. So when we click Take Payment, that takes us to our payment screen. Now Shepherd Pay, that's for the credit card reader, but we can also, of course, take any other method of payment. Since I don't have a credit card reader, we'll say cash. And then you can simply say, pay all their invoices or a custom amount, and then go over and check out. And this will automatically pull up their invoice or receipt, and you can print or email those to the client as they wish from here. And those are the main parts of Shepherd.